Hey, this is Professor Homa. I'm going to go over the CSS very briefly just so you know what each property and value does for this exercise that you're doing for the nav list for when you do it yourself. So I'm going to take a look at the CSS here and I'll show samples as I go down it. Again, not the most exciting thing to watch. This part here, the nav A, I'm actually going to get to that later, but this basically colors the text. It removes the underline and it puts it in a font and it makes it a certain size. Well, there I said it. So, and this actually works for both of them. That's why I said I was going to wait till the end. But really, by saying nav A, that means whether it's in the nav top or nav left, that means it's any link that's on this page. By you saying nav A means that it's going to put the font. So it's just the font decoration stuff that's really happening here. The color, removing the underline. So that's all that does there. Now, moving on to the nav top section. Again, that's this section here, just the top part that I'm talking about. As I move down here. Now I put a background color for the nav section of that almost teal type color, creates a background color for the entire region. Because nav is a block element, it goes across the entire page. So as I resize it, it'll go almost 100% across the entire page. Moving down here, this is nav top UL. That means that's the unordered list inside of nav top. And what I did first was do a list style none, removes bullets, padding. It puts this one here, it's actually 24 pixels is top and bottom, 0 is right and left. So what it does for the list, it puts space above and below, 24 pixels above and below. So what that actually does is this space up here and this space up here or down here, that space on either side creates the padding, and that gives it the sense of being vertically centered, because we don't really have a vertically centered property that we can put on a nav. So that's the way we do it. We just put the same padding on either side. So it's 24 on top and bottom, 0 on the right and left, and we just align the whole thing centered. So all these buttons are kind of aligned in the center. The nav top LI, display inline. That's the thing that puts all these buttons all on one line. If you took this out, if I just cut this out and took a look at it, that's what it would do. They would be block elements, or they'd be part of a list and they would go across the page. But putting this in here for the line items or the list items, what that does is it makes these kind of go in a line. Another thing, moving down here, and that's all we do for that. We're not putting all the background colors and all that stuff in the LI. We're putting them in the links. And the reason we're putting all this information in the links and we're putting all these declarations for the links is so that we can hover over the entire area. So it's really treating this whole area as a link, because if it was just the LI, we would just be on the text. But right now it's going to be the whole area that we're going to be over. That's why we actually are putting all these background colors and everything on the link and not the LI. We're leaving the LI alone. So what we're doing is padding. We're putting padding on it, background color, display and block. Let me just show you what happens here. And we also have margin, creates separation between the buttons. We have margin top and bottom and 12 pixels on the left and right. This is the important one right here, 12 pixels on the left and right. That actually creates putting separation in between them. So the up and down, or the distance on the top and bottom, that will only affect it when it gets smaller. That creates this. This is the 6 pixels in here that I have in there. So that will only affect it when we go in there. But normally, you're not going to have to worry about that. It's all going to be on one line. So that's the margin. But the important thing here is this display inline block. We haven't seen that before, and I'll give you somewhere to look that up. And also a width, because if I take these out, I'll just cut these out and you can just see what happens. Okay, now it doesn't look much different, except notice that the width of these are basically the width of the text, other than, plus the padding around it. So it makes the buttons different sizes, which doesn't look quite as nice, because based on how long the word is, luckily these are all short words. But if one was a long word, you'd have one long button and some short buttons. So what we have to do here, we have to do two things. We put in a width of 120. Now, if we just put in a width, it wouldn't work. We actually have to put display inline block. And you can't use block because it'll stack them, and you can't use inline because it won't do anything. It's inline block. It treats them like blocks, except inline. Exactly what it looks like, and that allows us to put horizontal buttons the way they are. So that's kind of a neat thing to do with that, and that gives us buttons that are actually even size. They're 120 pixels wide. And then the last thing, this is an easy thing, the background color we put for a hover. So that's the thing where you hover over it, we put a dark green on there. And remember, when we do a quick edit on here, once you work with a couple colors, you could move it around on here and keep it in the same family. There's my 3 kind of teal colors that I'm using. So I just used a darker one and then a little bit darker more when I worked on that. So that's the top navigation. Left navigation, just again, buttons over here, you can see they're round cornered, they have shadows. So a little bit different over here. Again, list style none, we have to do that. Margin left, that just moves it away from the edge. This moves the whole list away from the edge. So it's not right against the side of our page. The LI, nothing to put in there right now for the line items or the list items, nothing to put in there right now, but a bunch of stuff we had to put in here. We have to make them block. And you might think, well, aren't they block already? Well, if you take them out, we can't make them a certain width. Again, if we took this out, I'll just take this out and take a look at it. This is what it looks like. They all overlap in each other. So we have to put in, we have to make them kind of still work as a block so we could put their own width in there. So I made it like 144 pixels. So display block and these have to go together. And again, for all this stuff, I'm going to want you to put comments in there so you know what it's for. And again, experiment. Change it. Take it out. See why it changes. That's what I do. I change all these things and see what affects the other. That's the only way you're going to learn about it. So now it should look normal again, and it does. And the only thing left here, again, this is for the nav left, a link, and the visited. We have, a couple different things here. We notice we don't have to put text decoration none because that's all done up here. That text decoration stuff is done up there. The font, the color, that's done up. So that affects all the links. For this specific link, or I should say down here, a couple things we're doing. Padding, that just provides the padding inside the button. Margin bottom, that just really does this. Just adds space between the buttons. This area in here, that's created by that. That's what creates that. If I move this over here, this margin bottom 12 pixels, that's this part here. That's what's creating that. The padding is just the padding around the text. And it doesn't matter how much is on the right because we gave a width to the button. The background color, border radius, 8 pixels. Obviously, if you increase that or make it less, if I increased it to 12, they'd be more round. You can see they're more round now if you increase that. I don't like them too round. Also, this whole part here, that's the box shadow. We did that on our body tag the one time, but in this case, we're just putting it on buttons. And we have to put the value down because I have like 5 pixel over, 5 pixel down, 7 pixel blur. And even the opacity, the alpha, I have down to 0.3, which is like 30%. So I want a very subtle shadow here. I don't want a real harsh shadow. In fact, some of these numbers could even go down after you do them. And if you do change one, you could just copy and paste it. And then the last thing is really the hover here, which is the hover color. So that's really the CSS. So I encourage you, and I'm going to ask you to put as many comments in here. Matter of fact, I'm going to ask you to put comments after every one that you can put here because you almost need to do that as notes for yourself. Even though it takes some time, you can just copy and paste these and put your comments. So you're going to do the CSS and then also put the notes to yourself. Then you'll have them for yourself. You'll have your own notes.